Good morning, Wheaton. It's great to be here with you, and my work, 4 works of mine, some of them from way back in my graduate school days in Japan, has arrived here before I have, so I was happy to be reunited with them yesterday as I walked around the beautiful exhibit. It's one of the, I was actually really amazed how well curated this exhibit is. It's simply world class, and I'm grateful for Wheaton faculty and the curatorial team to make this exhibit such a highlight, really, of this journey into Shusaku Endo's book, Silence. And if you haven't seen the exhibit, it closes this week. So please go and join the others in considering silence through the artifacts of 17th century. The work that was briefly shown on screen is the original stepping blocks that Endo, I'm sure he himself has seen this, although his journey into silence began with another Fumie down in Nagasaki. For those of you who never read Silence or is not aware of the story, there is a major motion picture coming out by none other than Martin Scorsese. He has been working on this film for the last 20-some years, over 25 years. Considers this to be his life work. It is a traumatic tale, not an easy story to go through. And yet, I want to make a case today that it is a story that we can actually experience the burning bush. That his novels, and actually his life, Shusaku Endo's life, despite the reputation that he is a novelist of the darkness, of trauma, of oppression and pain, I see him now after journeying with this author, Japanese Catholic author of 20th century, passed away in 1995, as the source of compassion. And I even make the case in my book, Silence and Beauty, that Endo could very well be described as one of the greatest novelists of grace of 20th century. Now, the reputation of Endo is otherwise. So how do I get from that reality of despair and darkness, this picture of trauma, and to read Endo's Silence is traumatic. It was for me many years ago as an undergraduate student at Bucknell University. And then later on, although I wasn't a Christian then, so I didn't really fully understand this trauma. Later on, as I read the novel in Japanese, for the first time since my first encounter with Endo, and by that time I had been freshly baptized into the Christian church. But encountering this image of Fumie, which was created by a metalsmith named Yusa Hagiwara in Nagasaki in the 1600s, it was the first of the 20 images that was made, possibly ordered by the apostate priest, Father Ferreira, or Chuan, his Japanese name. There's much speculation surrounding this, but one historical fact that you should know about this object, a cursed object. First is a background. They wanted to identify hidden Christians. So the magistrates wanted to target, the edict was in the end of 1500s, to ban Christianity from Japan. And for the 250 years, this ban stood. So naturally, they in order to enforce this edict, they had to find ways to identify Christians who are hiding. A lot of people don't realize that in 1560s, there were over 300,000 Christians in Japan. That's a remarkable amount, considering the population of Japan then. 300,000 Christians when the edict was made by the dictator, system that will move into feudal shogun system that will last, Tokugawa system that will last 250 years. And the magistrates, possibly in collaboration with this giant of faith who came to Japan as a missionary, he was the Billy Graham of his day, mentored many priests. Younger priests saw him as the North Star of their missionary journeys. Jesuits priests of that time was highly educated. They were the best of the best. And they saw Japan as a place to send the best of the best. This was, to them, the end of the world. This was to fulfill the Great Commission, to send the best to Japan. And Father Ferreira, played by Liam Neeson in the movie, goes to Japan with tremendous results. Many people come to Christ, what you might call revival, although that word really doesn't apply here, because it was the first time that Japan seemed to have been so exposed, so taken in to the gospel message that many Japanese turned to him, including daimyos and warlords of the day. Tremendous shift in culture that I believe has lasted to this day, that affected Japanese culture and their sense of aesthetics and beauty to this day, happened all at that time. As Father Ferreira was coming in and many other Jesuits and Franciscan missionaries, setting up seminaries and hospitals all over Japan, and Japanese began to turn to Christ. And yet this edict was passed, and they had to go into hiding. Father Rodriguez in the Story of Silence and Father Agape. Father Rodriguez is actually modeled after an Italian Jesuit priest, a historical figure, Giuseppe Chiera, who ended up in Japan to find out what happened to this giant, the Billy Graham of his day. Could it possibly be that his mentor, his beloved mentor, would deny his faith and end up losing his faith? In fact, he was writing books against Christianity in Japan, hunting down priests hiding with the Christians. He just could not believe that. So Father Rodriguez, played by Andrew Garfield in the movie, Father Agape, played by Adam Driver in the movie, goes to Japan with this mission to find out, knowing that they might very well meet what happened to all the priests, captured, tortured, hung upside down in a pit. Knowing that there was danger involved, they still landed in Sotome, Nagasaki, which is a cove that you can safely land without being discovered near Nagasaki, southern tip of Japan. So that's the beginning of the Story of Silence. I won't spoil it for you, for those who have not read the novel. But if you're going to read the novel, please read it to the end. Don't give up on the story. Endo, as a writer, insists that we persevere through our traumas. He wants us to journey through the darkness, confusion, ambiguities, and possibly loss of faith of someone that we love or someone that we admire greatly. The deep trails of darkness into the human condition. You can literally walk through that in Endo's work, and Endo, like a good mystery novel writer, sets up many clues in the beginning, but just like good mystery novel writer, all those clues are misleading. Notice yourself as you read a book, how you begin to identify with, possibly, but eventually judge each of the characters that Endo depicts. Their journey into darkness is tainted with betrayals and failures. Notice how we stand over them as if we, in similar conditions, would not do the same. To run away from responsibilities that we have been so sure we've been called into. To walk into a situation that we know that we have been trained to handle, and yet we fail miserably. And we know how this works, whether it be our roommates, whether it be our friends, whether it be our lovers, whether it be our parents, our pastors, our mentors. We have been there. And Endo knows that every human being has experienced trauma and has dealt with pain. And so he writes to those of us who are willing to face that. And so take note of yourself as you read the book and what our hearts end up doing as we read the book. And Endo sets this up in a way that we cannot deny, looking at ourselves in the mirror at the end of the novel and saying, I have seen myself in this novel. In the story of Exodus that we pay attention to today, Moses meets Yahweh, the Creator, God, this reality, the ontology of our beings. And the meeting takes place in this enigmatic burning bush, burning yet not consumed, draws attention to this nomadic shepherd who is running away from things, running away from his trauma, running away from his pain. He would much rather stay there. But through this bush, God speaks to such a person, feeling and literally a failure as a leader. He has even failed in even the most normative standards of humanity. But he is there as an exile, haunted by his past. And here in a burning bush, God speaks. Silence is like this burning bush. God will speak through this enigmatic story of a Catholic writer in 20th century, and I have been spoken to personally by this God of the Bible. Calvin Searveld said, "It is the very nature of creation that the whole world is like a burning bush, even though we walk around all the time with our shoes on. Whole world is like a burning bush. Every single one of us is a burning bush, or should be, to the world. My mentor and my pastor for many years, Tim Keller, said this: a Christian needs to be an enigma to the world, to your friends, a burning bush to them. What does he mean by that? Art and what we make into the world needs also to be a burning bush. And Endo gives us a wonderful example. But here's another one. If you came this way, taking any route, starting from anywhere, at any time or at any season, it would always be the same. You would have to put off sense and notion. You are not here to verify, instruct yourself, or inform curiosity or carry report. You are here to kneel, where prayer has been valid. And prayer is more than an order of words, the conscious occupation of the praying mind, or the sound of the voice praying. And what the dead had no speech for, when living, they can tell you, being dead, the communion of the dead is tongued with fire beyond the language of the living. Here, this intersection of the timeless moment is Wheaton, and nowhere, never, and always. That's T.S. Eliot for quartets, little Gidding passage at the end of the masterpiece. Yes, I exchanged England for Wheaton at the end. Last time I saw the beloved professor Roger Lundin, I was sitting across from him in this church, Little Gidding, in England. Saw his wife there, Bruce Herman and his wife, my friends that I collaborated with to bring T.S. Eliot work into a collaborative exhibit. Sat there with my wife, and that is my memory of Roger. What a legacy you have here at Wheaton. And these losses haunt us, continue to surround us. But Eliot is right, that there is wisdom in those who has passed, but their voices are alive in you and in me. That I can speak of him today, remembering his gentle smiles and mentorship to so many of us. He was a burning bush. He was. And so many of your mentors and your losses, people that have built the foundation of this place, they too have become words and poetry. They are the guiding map that follow Christ into this mystery, knowing that they are imperfect, knowing that they have failed, knowing that they have betrayed, knowing that they are not worthy. But God chose them for such a time as this. Endo's work is that voice for us today that refracts through our traumas and our experiences, things that we may not even be able to talk about, but it will come out reading this novel. But if you're going to read a novel, read it to the end. By the end, I mean the appendix. Do not miss the appendix. In the Japanese version, Endo did not put the word appendix in between the last line of the story that he wrote and the beginning of the note, historical note that Endo tweaked only a little bit. This was 2 pages that Endo found that began to ignite his imagination about Father Kira, who becomes Father Rodriguez in the novel. This document is the key genesis point, the beginning of the journey for Endo. He puts it at the end. Now, so you might now go to the appendix first and read that, but it's not going to make sense unless you read the whole thing. This is Endo's craft. He makes us read to the end and then read the appendix, because it reveals something about the reality of the story that proves that this is not a novel about nihilism and existentialistic crisis, loss of faith in modern times. No. This is a work of compassion. This is a work of somebody saying that we may talk about the heroes of faith, and we should. Our Sunday schools and our preachings are filled with examples of noble, faithful people who founded this university, who led the way, and we should talk about them. But what about those of us sitting in our pews who know in their hearts that they cannot live up to that standard? What about those of us who fail every day to faithfully follow Christ? What about those of us who cannot forgive ourselves for stepping over people on 9/11, in traumas of our lives, how we stepped on images of our loved ones, forgot about them, left them behind? What about them? I write in my Silence and Beauty book this. Through his description of trauma, Endo succeeds in portraying a story that generatively opens up to the world. It moves the reader toward healing, toward the good news of the Bible. A reader familiar with a typical critique of silence may be startled to read this pronouncement. Silence is a profoundly missional novel, despite the fact that it describes the failures of faith. Its mission is not about triumphantly regarding the island of Japan as an imperialistic exploit. Instead, it is a mission of entering deeply into the psyche of Japanese hearts struggling with trauma, just like us. It provides a way for the Japanese to be truly liberated, and also enters the heart of darkness, the ground zero, the universal realm of trauma reverberating in the 20th century and 21st century. Thus, through the Japanese psyche of silence, a story of a universal realm of trauma is unveiled. Endo points to the possibility of the sun breaking through the common ground of suffering. Is God silent? This is the question that's often asked of dealing with silence. Is God silent? Or does God speak through the burning bush? Let's pray. Father, I dare not answer that question, because I know that in the journeys of souls here in this room and beyond, that is a question only you can answer. So I pray for Wheaton, I pray for both the students, faculty, and staff, that as Endo saw fit to describe Japan as a Christ-haunted country, that we would be so haunted by the enigmatic reality of Christ breaking into our hearts. The embossed, debossed images of Christ stamped through the difficulties, the traumas that we would much rather run away from. But Lord, give us grace and strength that we may indeed, that as your students here, as your followers at Wheaton, that you will be present in our suffering, that you will speak to us through those times, that you will minister to us and reveal the way so that as we look back, as Endo did, that we have told the story and made the future through those experiences so that others can be directed, can be encouraged, can be strengthened by your Spirit. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.